One of the biggest regrets of my life is because I really disconnected myself at that time from my entire Indigenous family.
Jenn Harper first came on my radar screen when she was on The Dragon's Den. I imagine, like many who are walking into that environment with the dragons and the lights in the studio, she was intimidated. But she made a wonderful presentation, and what I really saw was someone with an extraordinary heart.
People like me who were interested in building businesses that were about doing business and doing good.
And I love how Michelle Romanow and Arlene Dickinson told her that it was too early to sell equity. Hold on, build your dream. And you'll soon learn what an extraordinary business she's created, and one where purpose stands above profit, where a percentage of her sales goes back to helping others.
I feel uplifted by the people of this country in so many ways, and I feel like there's still so many more Canadians to get to learn about Cheekbone Beauty as well, right?
Where the quality of her products, the ingredients, matter desperately to her, not only in terms of her customers who apply her mascara or blush or lipstick, but also afterwards, how they impact the planet.
Clean, sustainable, vegan beauty products that actually are making people wear makeup again.
You learn about Jenn from the addiction she battled, the sadness of losing her brother, to this journey she's on that really is about believing in something and believing in who you are. Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast, and ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated. Jenn Harper, welcome to Chatter That Matters.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I've been a fan of everything that you're doing, and it's not just your entrepreneurial success, that you're a role model for both women-led entrepreneurs and as well as Indigenous. It truly is that every time I've heard you speak or win an award, you do so with such grace and humility. That's testament to somebody that in many ways just feels grateful for being able to do what you do.
I do feel grateful. I've had lots of jobs, worked for lots of people, but when I discovered entrepreneurship through Cheekbone Beauty, I thought, what a powerful way to really live the life that you want.
Your early days, you were brought up really disconnected from your Indigenous roots, raised by a non-Indigenous mother. And I'm curious how that experience shaped you and what led you to, in your 30s, realizing that those Indigenous roots were very important part of who you are.
In my early childhood, up until I was about 14, I did have a really good relationship with my father. He lived in Toronto and we lived in the Niagara region. And so that was a greyhound away, if you will. And I would visit him. And then for grade 6, actually, I actually moved to Toronto and lived with him because I think my mom did something like any kid happens to them. And I said, fine, I'm going to live with my dad. And she wasn't playing around that day. She said, fine, you can go live with him. And so it's one of those experiences. I literally remember thinking that I was like just being stubborn and being not saying to her that I didn't really want to go live with my dad. But it was a wonderful experience. I'm glad I did. He and I got closer, and so did my siblings that he had with his new partner, my stepmother at the time. And it was really solidified our relationship. And so we had this great relationship. What happened was when I was 14, they decided to move back to the reservation. So from Toronto back to my dad's home community, my community, it's called Northwest Angle. It's literally 20 hours from Toronto. So me visiting or seeing my family was really far away. And so at 14, I remember just feeling so abandoned. No one had ever asked me how I felt about anything, and nor do parents usually ask children back then how they feel about anything and what this was going to look like. And so I had gone to see him maybe twice. And then when I was 19, I was living in Toronto, going to school there and working, and he had come for a visit with a new partner. It was not a great experience. I always knew my dad had a problem with alcohol, only because that's what my mother had told me. It was the first time in my life that I was actually seeing it in person. And I decided at 19, again, you can tell a person who made rash decisions in their early years without holding back. And I really just said to him, I don't need you in my life and I don't want to see you ever again. And I didn't even say to him, unless you stopped drinking or something I just remember I ended our relationship and it was really unfortunate. I look back now, that's probably one of the biggest regrets of my life is because I really disconnected myself at that time from my entire Indigenous family. So all my aunties, uncles, I know my mom and him still spoke on the side. Obviously her sharing when I got married, when I had kids. And it wasn't until I think I was 36 when I had a phone call with him for the first time since I was 19. And that's only because I had been battling alcoholism for a long time. I remember my mom saying, maybe you should call your dad and talk to him because I know that he had eventually overcome addiction and was sober. And she thought it would be a good time that I started to speak to him again.
If I remember from one of the articles where you were interviewed, you talked about part of the way you overcame your addiction. 3 months after you were on this path, you had this dream.
It's so crazy when I think back to it because I'm like, who actually does this in their right mind? So I get sober in November 26, 2014. In January of 2015, this is when I had this dream with 3 Native little girls covered in lip gloss. I wake up that night and I start literally writing out some ideas, which now I know is that's part of the business plan that I had originally typed out that evening. And I wrote, okay, I'm going to figure out how to make a lip gloss. And I want to use a portion of the profits to do something to support my Indigenous community. So I'm now 38. I'm fully sober. It was just over 2 months into sobriety. And that's probably the longest because I even think when I went to rehab in 2010, that was 5 weeks. That was like 6 weeks had been the longest prior to this point that I had ever been able to remain completely sober. And so I'm in sobriety. I have this dream. At the same time, it was like there was this shift in the world, in particular in Canada, when the TRC was finally released, this final report, the Truth and Reconciliation Report. And I was looking around my life, and one of the things that I had such a struggle with is I loved my past career. I loved my clients, but it always involved, let's go for a drink. Right? Like I was a salesperson. That's a big part of our world. I could tell that I was looking for something new career-wise, and I just had no idea what that was going to look like. So I have this dream, and it's so real to me after that evening that was going to be my next career path decision change. And I was going to figure out how to make makeup. I was a huge fan of brands like Tom's Shoes at the time and like Patagonia with this idea, because it hadn't been very popular in the world, this idea of a social impact business where you can have a business, but you can do good at the same time. A lot of businesses, there's always been, corporate responsibility. That's always been layered in with big conglomerates and corporations. But this idea of that the business exists, for a cause rather than just for profit. And I had really started to pay attention to those brands and hear about this world called the B Corp community, which is another place where people like me who were interested in building businesses that were about doing business and doing good at the same time. And it most certainly has been, Tony, as you said, this is what has helped me heal. It helped me change my life in so many ways. It's like I found this path, and I read a really powerful book that I always love sharing with anyone who might be struggling with anything. I don't know what it is, but I always feel like this is something to give in return, called The Power of Habit by Dr. Charles Duhigg. I'm a firm believer in creation and that we were created and with a purpose and on purpose. And when I read this book, it was the first time I understand, like neurologically speaking, our brains and how they were made, and that we had the ability as human beings, because we're at the top of this food chain, to actually change. And when I thought about my addiction and went back in my life and how it probably started and where and why, realized that, okay, I can use this business as my pathway.
So you got this North Star, you've got this dream you want to manifest, but also in 2016, I'm curious at how you dealt with the loss of your brother.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That was probably, I always say it's my constant companion of pain. Quite honestly, you look back over the sometimes years of your life and you're like, how did I survive that year? Like, I would have thought, that I would automatically go back to abusing alcohol, but thankfully I didn't. And in particular with BJ, his words when I was telling him about building Cheekbone, honestly, if I didn't share this with him, I don't know if Cheekbone would be here, because it's things that he said to me in those early days that pushed me so hard. Before he died, we were driving through Lake of the Woods. It's a beautiful place in Ontario. If you've never been there, it's like just stunning. I'm telling him about the business and I'm asking him questions. And one of the things he said to me is like, Jen, wow, this sounds amazing. Like, our kids, they need so much help and this is going to bring people hope. And he really believed that. I remember when I first found out about his death, and I'm just literally was like so numb and in pain. But then a few days later, after, his memorial and funeral services back in Lake of the Woods, just recognizing there's still so much work to do for our communities to see this brand and how possibly big it can be. And it can be someone like us that does something like this. And that's, I think, when I recognize now what maybe my purpose is in supporting this, is being here because I'm able to, and to be the person who shows the next generations or this generation that it is possible.
How much of BJ's with you still when you're being acknowledged at an awards ceremony, or you're realizing that there's more to this business than you said just beauty? It's this sense of possibility for your community. Do you feel he's with you?
I will tell you this for sure, and I do know this, that when I do get to see him again, because I truly believe that, we will have so much to talk about.
That's beautiful. I bet he gives you such a hug and say, way to go, sis. When we come back, Jen and I have a candid conversation about the demands of growing a business and also the demands she puts on herself. And then she teases us about a pop-up store where all the proceeds are going to go to creating scholarships for those in need. Hi, it's Tony Chapman. More to come with my discussion with Jenn Harper, founder of Cheekbone Beauty, and what's next for this sensational entrepreneur. There should be thousands of stories like Jen's. Thousands, entrepreneurs carrying their culture, their vision, their resilience in the marketplace. When that happens, we don't applaud one remarkable founder, we build a stronger country. Picture it, an economy where every community has a chance to thrive, where every individual can see their potential reflected in real opportunity. That's the future RBC is working towards with their Reconciliation Action Plan. It's not words on paper, it's commitments turned into action. Opening doors to banking for Indigenous peoples, backing entrepreneurs who dream big, investing in youth and communities in the environment we all share. Creating space for Indigenous voices at the leadership table where decisions shape our collective future. Why does it matter to you, to me, to RBC? Because prosperity that leaves people behind isn't prosperity. Because the strength of this country depends on every voice being heard, every community being included. When we widen that circle of opportunity, we don't just lift some, we lift everyone. So as you listen to Jenn Harper's story, ask yourself, what would Canada look like if we multiplied her story 10,000 times? The stories like hers weren't rare, but routine. Now let's return to my conversation with Jenn Harper from Cheekbone Beauty.
I'm very honest with everyone, maybe to a fault sometimes, that this is not easy. It's really, really hard, and you have to be able to manage and handle the ups and downs. But our communities definitely need beacons sometimes, in the sense that we need people to look up to, we need people to believe in. So I really feel like that's part of my purpose, is to show the Indigenous community in particular, and women in business, that entrepreneurship, it is a path that we can choose. We can build this thing, and it can be a beautiful brand that we bring into the world.
My guest today is Jenn Harper, woman-led entrepreneur, Indigenous roots, finding a way to bring the values of her culture to bear on an industry, and how every day she demonstrates those values by caring for her customers and caring for the planet that we all share. You know, you talk about your addictive personality, and I would think a lot of entrepreneurs are quite addicted to their business because it is a game. And people think it's a perfectly paved speedway, but it's a game with lots of pitfalls. It's almost, I sometimes equate it to snake and ladders. Just when you're climbing, you think everything's good, you hit something and step back. But you talked about in preparation for this that you went to school, and you went to school with conferences and business books and learning more about your Indigenous culture. What advice can you give other people as they go from dreaming, which many of us have, to doing, which few of us do?
It's really important from a financial perspective and an operational perspective to really understand what kind of business you're building, that you fully need to recognize how much you don't know about that area if that's not your area of expertise, which is operations and finance, which weren't mine. And I wish much sooner I would have honed in on those things, because for us at Cheekbone, you know, you have partners and they have their business, and what you require from them, they don't always meet. And then you have to find the right partners that will meet the kind of business that you're trying to build so that you can financially afford to build the kind of business that you want to build. I've really learned that we're technically not a beauty business. We're like an operations and logistics business. If we don't get that figured out, we won't have a business. I think those things are so critical. And if you are a visionary and have the ideas and the dreams, and that's who I am, and has more of the creative side of the business, then you definitely need to find the right people. I now recognize why people have co-founders. There's like the tactical, analytical, and then the vision, and why they marry so well together, because that works.
Do you think part of the reason you had to take on this pain of figuring things out is because you are a role model and people are going to look to you and say, help me figure out my dream, as opposed to just simply being in charge of your dream?
Perhaps. Yeah. I've certainly now feel like I'm in a better position to be a mentor, to help somebody with the actual, the tactical moves strategically that you would need to make. And now when I'm mentoring, I do it once a year with a group from the West called the Forum. And these are the questions. I'm like, let's stop talking about marketing right now. How does your business operate? People would ask me those questions and I most certainly couldn't answer them, but now I know why they were asking.
And I was listening to a podcast you're on, and you were offering some advice to entrepreneurs. And the two words that really stuck out for me is patience and the long game. In the sense that as much as, social media narrative turns these teenagers into billionaires overnight, there's a reality to being in business.
If you build your business with that long view, then regardless of any of the outcome, you will be prepared for everything that comes your way. And so that I think that's really important, is to build it that it is financially strong, that you have a backup plan when a pandemic happens. We would have never managed or thought for that a few years ago, but it's something now. We've lived through one. Oh, how can you build a business that could be prepared for something like that should it happen again? Or when iOS changes happened in Apple, that dramatically changed an e-commerce business overnight. There was just dramatic changes. And so really understanding in life, they're going to throw us another curveball and we're going to have to figure that out. And it requires patience for sure to do that. And it's really hard for us as entrepreneurs. We're very excitable folks.
And you're talking about this lane of everything you have to do to get your business right. But I also like what you said in another interview, we have to work even harder on ourselves than we do on the business. Because if we don't, you might have success on one side, but a dramatic failure on you as a human being.
I feel like the Cheekbone Beauty and me here in this position, we most certainly get a lot of attention from media and business places. We are not the most successful business in Canada, nor the fastest growing. There's businesses that are probably super quiet. They've never spoke to anyone and are doing $100 million a year. And we are scraping here by. It's really interesting to me to recognize now that one, it's an example for me, my community, the team that works with me, to do the work of taking care of ourselves, because regardless of what position you're in, you're going to have to, whether you're in a sort of a public facing entrepreneur or one that is even the quiet version. I think the work is hard regardless. You're just constantly on that roller coaster. And one thing that I've learned is so important is if I didn't take care of myself every day, I would be in big trouble. Like when I talked about my own plan and routine for sobriety, that is how I start every single day, whether it's outside, no matter where I am in the world, it's prayer, meditation. I am physically doing something in nature or inside but as much as possible, get outside at some point and touch a tree and just be there. And that's an hour of my day for the first part. And that is how I maintain who I am. I call it my circle, my quadrant circle for spaces physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Are all those full? And I envision it in my mind as like if liquid was filling them up, right? And so when I'm doing that morning check-in, that's what I'm checking in with for myself. And if something's low, what do I need to do to uplift that?
So often people look to a magic little help or a pill or a self-help book. Do you think that the real path to what you're finding is to just be so self-aware of who you are, what matters, and to realize that one of those tanks are getting empty, that maybe we spend more than an hour, or we need to do something different because my emotional state isn't right. I'm spiritually not grounded the way I should be. Is that more of a self-awareness, you think, versus something I can buy off a shelf or over at a counter at a pharmacy?
It's our time that we invest in ourselves to ask ourselves those questions. You're right. It is, I think self-awareness is the perfect word for it. And it's not easy. I think I've been fortunate because of sobriety that I know it's something I have to pay attention to, because that's like my plan. That's my system to stay where I am. If you don't struggle with anything major like that, I feel people might have a harder time understanding that how much better they could be if they did connect with themselves further. The past Jen was never fully aware. And quite honestly, probably because I didn't want to be, because I didn't like who I was going to see. In those moments when you know something's low and not working, you have to be honest with yourself to figure out how to fix it.
The people that I've had on from the Indigenous peoples that talk about the learnings of their ancestors, I'm always so moved by how common sense it is and how quickly we seem to have dismissed it as folklore. And when I look at your core values at Cheekbone, you talk about them rooted in the Indigenous 7 grandfather teachings: love, respect, bravery, truth, honesty, humility, and wisdom. Tell me how those lessons are passed on, and what could we do as a society that seems to move at the speed of light, that spends most of its time scrolling, take a moment and breathe these values into our body? Because I think if we embodied them, this world would be in a much better place.
I talk to a lot of young people and other entrepreneurs, and one thing I've always made clear is you need your own personal set of values and principles. It's almost like writing your own mantra of your existence, right? People have done this for their families. Like when you're parents, you start to teach this to your children. I don't like the word rules, but if we actually believed in respect, I think we would just all act so different, right? Like in interactions or situations, whether in the work setting, at home with our family, or in the community or in public. And you're not wrong. It's missing in society, and when I started reading about them and learning about them, I just really recognized that this was a great way to build a business. Like, why not use that as the foundation, the core values of a company? You
must be very proud of attaining B Corp status. For people that don't understand, this isn't simply $200 in an application process. This is a gauntlet that you have to run, and is demanding, because nobody wants to surrender that to anybody else that doesn't have the same like-minded values that they do. This is truly a community where purpose rules equal to profit. You have to dot the I's and cross the T's. You can't just hide under this auspices of marketing or an Indigenous-led business. There's so many, whether it's greenwashing, lies in general are just rampant
And it's human nature. It's how many businesses have run for many years. They're just not telling the truth. And I wanted to build something where it felt super transparent. If you know my background, I came from the seafood world. And when I started to learn about a lot of the certifications in the seafood space and how it really was a matter of writing a check, I was like, you're a little bit shocked, but then you realize, okay, this is what the world is that we live in. And then I learned about the same thing when I got to beauty, that for the most part, every organization just wanted you to write a check and nobody's actually checking your supply chain. We started working with the B Corp community, discovered that there is all of these checks and balances in place. I remember it took our company, we're small, and it still took us over a year to get them all the information. And what it has helped me do is not only build an organization. One, we talk about the company core values. It's about employee relationships, engagement, how we pay our people. Nobody at Cheekbone makes minimum wage. Everyone makes a living wage at the very minimum. Whether you're part-time or full-time, like that's just something that we've embedded in because of the B Corp community, and looking at how we plan to grow for the future and different opportunities we could have for employees at some, like these are all things like we've built out ready for us to scale as a company. And when we get to those spaces, thinking about future stock options for employees as well, like things like that are added in so that like when the company is doing well, the people that have invested their time here and actually care and want to work here are going to be rewarded for those things in the future. And then when it came to supply chain, products, packaging, raw materials, I can literally tell you where every ingredient from any chemical, and everything's a chemical. The word chemical gets a bad rap in the beauty industry. I don't know why, because I'm like, water is a chemical. It's called H2O. So I use the word chemical here, and chemicals are natural and synthetic. There's many versions of a chemical, and there's good ones and bad ones. But that's the language we'll use because it is chemistry when you're making beauty products. Every chemical that goes and raw material that goes into one of our products, we can literally tell you exactly the source of that and where it comes from, because we have what we call a product dossier. The moment someone comes to us with a question about a product or an ingredient, I can share with them that these are the certifications from this raw material. This was the source. This is where we got it from. Here's everything that is gone down the supply chain. And we've done that so that our customer feels and see that we're not hiding. We're trying to be as transparent as possible with people.
And how do you come to terms with you want to keep employees on at living wages? You're doing all of this stuff because it's the right thing to do. And then a retailer says, but Jen, I need 10% off. There's a race to price. There's a race to the bottom. How do you defend and be valued for the things that you're doing that bring value to society overall, but might be discounted by a retailer because they go, I don't care. I just want a better price.
Yeah, the truth is, I haven't worked with too many, so I only have my experience of and I think food retailers may be a little bit different than the retailers, whether it's department store or beauty. So we've worked with JCPenney, Sephora, Well.ca, the shopping channel thus far, and independent boutiques. So that's sort of my area of expertise. And what happens is in the original negotiations is when we decide the terms of the contract, and that includes how much of a discount we're giving them to be a retailer to support our business. And so once those decisions are made, it's based on we would never make one that's not good for the business. And so thankfully, we've not run into a position where anyone's asking us to discount. When we do have a sale at one of our retailers, we're part of that. And we have all the right to say yes or no, we want to be a part of this sale or that. It's really interesting. We haven't been faced with any decisions where it feels like, oh, wow, this is really uncomfortable and not going to work for our brand or business. The truth is, volume is what is going to help any business, and we just need more Cheekbone Beauty customers. Like, that's just the fact. I'm going to get bolder in this next year or in years to come, because I've never really said that. I've said support our business if you share something. No, we need people to buy our products and use them regularly and fall in love with them. If you fall in love with them, maybe we're not the right blush for you and you don't want it. But if you wear blush, if you wear lipstick, if you wear mascara, I can guarantee you that you're going to fall in love with the products. Like, it's very rare we have people that don't. And I'm so proud. Someone who has not come from the beauty industry, knew nothing about the science behind beauty, knew nothing about the efficacy of a beauty product. We have been able to make clean, sustainable, vegan beauty products that actually are making people wear makeup again. And so we put ourselves what we call in the natural clean category. There hasn't been a brand that has been able to bring bold colors back to this space that actually work on people's skin. And we're getting messages that people who haven't been able to wear makeup in 30, 20, 10 years can wear our products without any issues. Like, I personally never wore eye makeup because I would have to itch it off. So when we formulated and developed our eye makeup, it was intentional that if you had allergens, when I learned what things were impacting me and not, we're like, let's formulate this without those things. And so we've been able to make a 99% naturally derived mascara that literally causes zero issues to people with sensitive eye sensitivities. And so it's just phenomenal to me. And I know we will get more customers the more people find out about the brand.
One of the first times you came on my radar is when you were on the Dragon's Den. How was it to go into the den knowing that you had a story to tell? And what did you learn from telling that story?
We weren't even the brand we are today. All beauty space industry mostly uses what's called, unless they own their own labs, like big companies like L'Oreal owns their own lab. Estee Lauder owns their own labs. Most people don't do that. We built our own lab in 2021 or 2020. We went on Dragon's Den in 2019. So pre-2021, that's the year I call that our brand changed to where we are today. And remember, I entered this industry not knowing anything. So we started using this private label products, and that's what we went on Dragon's Den with. I still couldn't believe how many products we were selling. And the truth is, it was 6 months after we launched, people started asking me questions about ingredients and packaging. And I literally sat there almost embarrassed by myself in my basement, because that's where I was wrapping up these orders. And I was like, oh my goodness, we cannot go on like this. I have no idea what I'm selling people, because I started to reach back out to the partners that were making the products for us and would get ghosted. Nobody would answer my questions. And then I started to learn that this industry is hiding things, and they're hiding it on purpose because they know there's ingredients that shouldn't be in the products, right? And legitimately, I thought about it and I was like, okay, well, one, I have no idea how I'm going to figure out how to make the lipstick, and I had no money to do that. And so that's when I started putting, on my radar that I need to find someone to invest in this business. This is 2018. I meet Raven Capital. They're our investor to this day. They've invested $1.9 million into the brand. Before going on Dragon's Den, they gave me a term sheet. So I already knew I had this excellent offer called a convertible debt deal. They started off with $350,000 and they're like, let's go see what you can do. And I said, I'll sign it after Dragon's Den, because my dream was always that Arlene would be like, this is the best business in the world. Let me support you. And anyway, that's a fairy tale. So that didn't happen. But Arlene and Michelle yelled out the best advice that day on the show, because they were like, you were too early to give up equity. And thankfully, I didn't take an offer. I only got one offer, and it was for 50% of the company. And so that would have been a really bad deal. But I had this other deal. And so the moment we got invested, and what Raven knew was my real vision for Cheekbone Beauty. Our brand, of course, always had this great origin story. And, it's funny, I met Sephora back in 2018, and I had those private label products that went on Dragon's Den with me sitting at their boardroom in Mississauga. And they bluntly said, these products will never sit on our shelves. I get it. I knew exactly why. Anybody could do exactly what we were doing. They're like, you need to get innovative on product. We love you. We love this brand story. We believe an Indigenous brand deserves to exist, but you go to work and then come back to us, and kind of thing. And so I left that meeting. I didn't even Google it. For some reason, I ended up on Facebook, and this ad for how to make a lipstick popped up. And I got connected with this chemist who was out of Kitchener-Waterloo, and we started working together just on this side project of making the first lipstick. And then I went to Raven Capital with this new business plan of like, yes, this is Cheekbone Beauty. We want to be this representation for Indigenous community, but we also want to change the beauty industry by making products that are actually clean and sustainable. And so what the clean beauty category looks like now in most retailers and online is we're talking about products that, yes, check, they are safe for humans, but nobody is questioning if they're safe for the planet. And they're not. Many ingredients like dimethicone, isodiazine are known to harm environmental ecosystems in a negative way. And yet those are all safe and allowed on clean beauty brand lists. So Cheekbone Beauty, we defined our own clean beauty brand. It's called BNAD Beauty Standards. That's the word for clean in Anishinaabemowin. And our whole concept is, we're beyond clean, because as Indigenous people, we take obviously the safety of humans very seriously, but it's also the safety of the planet. Our raw materials that go into our products are purposefully more naturally derived so that when they go back into an ecosystem, like when you're wearing makeup in a lake, ocean, you're washing your face at the end of the day, those ingredients will break down or biodegrade back into that ecosystem.
So Jen, earlier on, you talked about your circle in the morning and the quadrant and how you go through it. I also see a similar circle happening to you in terms of my priorities in business. You're becoming very philanthropic. You've donated a lot of money back to your community. You as this role model, and then you finding time to still being a human being. How do you do it all?
I didn't get here by myself. There's incredible people behind the brand that have been here for a long time that really care about the work we do. And that's always been so important to me. It's like, great, you have a skill, but who are you as a human? I'll literally say if someone doesn't feel like they're following the grandfather teachings, are they still a fit at Cheekbone Beauty? And that means, one, just about respecting each other that we work with, having some humility. My biggest pet peeve is when an employee acts like they know everything. You know nothing. All of us know nothing. We're all on this planet together learning. And so if I didn't have that system, I wouldn't be able to be here doing the work, regardless of having the right people with me or not, for sure. But it's definitely that routine. I mean, there's no way I could do any of this, right? Without support from family. I have a great husband, thankfully. I have 2 incredible children that thankfully were completely out of the teen years now, because those were really hard while you're building a business. My mom is incredible. My dad and I have an incredible relationship now. And I feel just so lucky to have all of those right people around you, because you can't do anything alone. And then the network of the business community in Canada is incredible. Like, I feel uplifted by the people of this country in so many ways. And I feel like there's still so many more Canadians to get to learn about Cheekbone Beauty as well, right? Like, it's just such an amazing brand to learn about.
You know, Jen, I'm purposely running this because September 30th is a very special day for you. It's a day where you even give more. So tell me a little bit about what's happening. And I hope as the listeners listen to the podcast, they get involved as well.
We are having an in-person pop-up shop based on our For Future Generations Scholarship Fund, the Cheekbone Beauty Scholarship Fund, in conjunction with Inspire. We do this every September 30th, where a portion of a set of Cheekbone products that 100% of the proceeds are going back to the scholarship fund. And so that is happening in Toronto on Queen West on September 30th.
Jen, I always end my podcast with sort of my 3 takeaways, almost the same way this dream came to you about girls putting lipstick on. The word or letter B just keeps coming. Every word you say, and I'm just saying, it's almost like one, B is in terms of believing in yourself, and the fact that BJ believed in you, and others must have believed in you when you're fighting your addictions, and you believe in yourself, and you believe in yourself enough to spend an hour every morning making sure, as you said, that each one of those important parts of your whole being is together versus just diving into the next problem. The next one is just being tuned to your business. And I think B Corp was a big part of it, but just you realizing that operationally, what's going on with my supply chain? What exactly are they putting in my ingredients? And understanding that if you really were going to look in the mirror the rest of your life with pride about what you've created, you had to get into the nuts and bolts of the business. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs see the end result of the rock star flying around in a private jet. But what you're talking about, I think, is the most important thing. If you don't know how to tear that engine apart and rebuild it, you're never going to be a successful entrepreneur, because someone else is going to have your destiny in their hands. But the last thing is just being unique. And it's interesting how that came across, first of all, in your business, where you were honest enough to say we weren't unique at the time. We were one of many. Yes, they wanted an Indigenous business and woman-led, and wouldn't that be lovely to slap on a poster? But our brand and our product didn't deliver who that woman on that poster was. And I think that sense of being unique and having this higher purpose than just profit, the teachings of the grandfather, the sense of the values and being valued, and then just the smile that goes on your face when you're talking about there's mascara that people that used to just tear off their eyes, they can wear. Our product is biodegradable, but it's also got bold colors. So you deserve a lot more customers because your brand is unique, because you have built this, bridging your Indigenous roots, and you just deserve it because of your humility and passion to make this world a better place, not just in terms of people who wear your product, but the people that are behind the scenes that you say are part of the team and got you to where you are today. So you're just a beautiful human being.
Thank you so much. That's such a kind thing to say.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.